Hello, my name is Brittni Tengwall. I will be discussing the underdiagnosis of ADHD in females from a human biology and heredity perspective. There it goes. Okay, so how does this relate to the coursework? The topic relates to the coursework because it involves inherent traits, brain structure, hormone effects, as well as environmental interactions and diagnosis criteria. So genetic inheritance and epigenetic factors influence how ADHD presents differently in females versus males within their sex differences specifically. So why are females, or what are we investigating? We're investigating the why females are historically underdiagnosed with ADHD and how. So we're looking at the why and the how. In looking for information on this topic, I found three sources, specifically two articles that discuss biological and hereditary factors that contributed to this. Research showed that females often display internalized symptoms like anxiety and inattention that are less visible and often overlooked than the standard male presenting insight. They're physically not presenting as much like the males are, and the diagnostic tools are usually centered around that. Susan Young, which is one of my sources, in the article, Females with ADHD, an expert consensus statement taking a lifespan approach, found that internalizing symptoms such as anxiety, withdrawal, and inattentiveness contrast with external behaviors such as hyperactivity and impulsivity, which are more common in males. The diagnostic criteria set on the DSM-5 and the ICD-10 were based on male-centered research. And although females may display some of these symptoms, it is less likely to be recognized even under current diagnostic standards. So during the study, Young and others did a consensus study where they collected original data. There was no new data sets, but they collected original data. There were experts brought from various fields such as psychiatry, psychology, neuroscience, and even education. And when they looked at how ADHD in females present across participants' lifespan, they found lots of different information. It was found to be a higher threshold of genetic and environmental risks before ADHD is identified, such as siblings of females with ADHD show more symptoms compared to siblings of males, which would indicate a higher familial genetic burden required to trigger a diagnosis in a female. This means that if a family has a female with a diagnosis of ADHD, her brothers or sisters are more likely to also have ADHD symptoms or be diagnosed with ADHD. It is suggested of a generic risk factor needing to be more severe before showing up that meet the clinical criteria. So looking at those genetic factors specifically that are required in a female versus a male as well. So Young cited epidemiology, familial studies when discussing information on these siblings, and those were from Sweden's National Health Registers. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. So ADHD is passed down and affects brain function. Jeremy Polanczyk, I think I'm saying that right, a professor of child and adolescent psychiatry at the University of São Paulo Medical School in Brazil. He did a 2015 analysis that included nearly 88,000 youth across 27 countries, reporting a global ADHD prevalence of 3.4%. Polanczyk authored the annual research review, and it was titled A Meta-Analysis of the Worldwide Prevalence of Mental Disorders in Children and Adolescents. He noted that ADHD is considered one of the most heritable psychiatric conditions, with twin studies estimating heritability between 70 and 80%. So that is huge. This means that genetic factors play a dominant role in development. Brain imaging studies showed abnormalities in the prefrontal cortex as well as dopamine pathways, which regulate attention and impulse control. Although Polanczyk didn't directly compare males to females or females to males. Other research like that from Young suggests that the underdiagnosis partially occurs because their symptoms don't always match the more visible behaviors typically seen in the boys or males. This supports the idea that global diagnostic tools may be missing female diagnosis due to how symptoms are expressed differently. So even globally, it is an issue with diagnosis, but also looking at the brain and how it functions in females with ADHD is definitely something that needs to occur. It is tied directly to our course topics on heredity, gene expression, and brain function. Inheritance. So why is ADHD different in females? Hormonal regulation is a key factor in ADHD symptom expression, especially in females. According to Young, estrogen has been shown to enhance dopamine activity in the brain, which is directly related to attention and impulse control, which are key areas affected by ADHD. When estrogen levels fluctuate, such as during puberty and the menstrual cycle, during pregnancy and in menopause, the change in dopamine may contribute to increased ADHD symptoms in girls and women, which would obviously not happen in males. During this time, there is kind of a social stigma for those ADHD type symptoms to be happening during those times anyways. And we always say, oh, it's the hormones, it's, females and their hormones. And that's could very well not be the case with looking at how the dopamine affects ADHD symptoms in a totally different area of the brain during those times. So the endocrine system uses hormones to regulate bodily functions and maintain homeostasis. Hormones like estrogen and progesterone released from the ovaries influence the nervous system and can affect mood, focus, and energy levels. Estrogen's ability to increase dopamine transmission is important because dopamine dysfunction is a large factor in ADHD. Young also emphasized that during low estrogen phases before menstruation is when that would happen. Some females with ADHD report worsened concentration and irritability and emotional dysregulation, which are often misattributed in mood disorders such as PMS rather than ADHD. This underlies the importance of recognizing hormone-related symptom variability and changes in females when considering diagnosis and treatment. So looking at those females with like very severe PMS type symptoms, it could very well not be PMS directly related, but rather influenced ADHD symptoms due to hormones affected during these times. So this discussion connects to our course objectives around the endocrine gland function, hormone receptor binding, and hormone regulation of brain systems. It also illustrates intersection between genetics, biology, environment, and shaping mental health outcomes. Slide here. Okay. Diagnostic bias and male-centered tools. According to Young and Biderman, which was the third source that I had utilized, many diagnostic criteria for ADHD are based on male presentations, especially or specifically hyperactivity and other external like behaviors. Girls often show inattentive and internalizing symptoms, which current tools may overlook. This reflects a lack of inclusivity in the research, where studies were mostly done on male participants or all. This directly connects to our worksheet on recognizing valid science in the very beginning of the course. One key question from the worksheet asks, were appropriate scientific processes involved? So within that case, diagnostic frameworks were not developed with adequate gender diversity, which introduces bias into what we consider evidence-based. Also, when expertise is limited to one demographic, it leads to a narrow view of disorders like ADHD, ultimately affecting treatment and treatment options. Knowing what we know about the female brain is really important to incorporate into creating a framework for diagnostic tools. Let's go next. So Polanczyk discussed the role of sleep and circadian regulation in ADHD, expressing that sleep and circadian rhythm disruptors can worsen ADHD symptoms, especially in females. They may even affect gene expression related to brain development. Females in particular with ADHD may experience more sleep disturbances, which affect mood, cognitive functioning, and symptom severity. In addition, Young discussed how hormonal challenges or changes in sleep cycles across lifespan can disrupt melatonin cycles. Those melatonin cycles can also alter gene expression, the process of turning a gene on or off or on to produce RNA and protein. An example would be melatonin altering expression of genes relating to dopamine regulation, which is important for impulse control and attention. Another example would be hormonal shifts during puberty that interact with brain development, making symptoms worse or harder to spot. So in summary, hormones and sleep cycles, when they're out of sync, especially in girls and females, this can throw off the body's internal clock, and it affects how certain genes work in the brain, which may change how ADHD shows up or how severe it can become, the symptoms. Okay, future applications. Gene editing may one day help to detect ADHD risk earlier, but to do so responsibly, future studies must include diverse populations in order to avoid repeating the same exclusionary practices that have been done previously or have been done previously that lead to the underdiagnosis of ADHD in females. Our course emphasized the valid scientific claims, or that valid scientific claims come from methods that are transparent, peer-reviewed, and inclusive. So it's possible to question the validity of the research done in the past and how the diagnostic criteria was formed. It's possible to say that they were not necessarily inclusive of the female population, or that they weren't, depending on what those studies look like or what that research looked like. Ethical research must prioritize patient outcomes over profit, and have interdisciplinary teams, so a wide array of different individuals and with different expertise to look at the complexities of ADHD within both females and males. Research that fails to address these factors may lean closer to pseudoscience, even if it looks scientific on the surface. All right, so conclusion. ADHD in girls often goes unnoticed because of their biology expresses it differently. It's also been kind of set up that way to look at and diagnose or underdiagnose because of the criteria that is the diagnostic criteria. Women often suffer more long-term effects when not diagnosed early. So this is a human biology issue rooted in genetics, hormones, and inheritance, as well as highlighting the importance of scientifically valid claims. Thank you. That was all I had.